Okay, everybody, here's another thing that's going to happen in 2022, and that's going to be the rise of zombie companies beyond where they have been. And in fact, I think we're going to set a new record for zombie companies. Zombie apocalypse? No. But zombie bad news? Yes, definitely. Okay, so the Federal Reserve Board of Governors did a study of zombie firms about a year ago. And so the data that I have is a little bit out of date, but it's very authoritative. And what we can see is that the number of listed companies, that means they're listed on an exchange, rose from 2015 up to 16 up to 17. So it was about 9% in 2015 and got about 11% of listed companies were zombie companies in 2017. And a zombie company is a company that's effectively bankrupt but is able to continue on. But then the economy did very, very well in 2018 and 19. And so we went from 11% in 2017 to below 9% in 2018, and then got down to about 6.5%, 7% in 2019. But 2020, the COVID crisis bounced it back up to over 9%. So we went from, let's call it 7% to 9 and small change. That's a pretty big increase. That's like a 25-30% increase in the number of zombie companies. I think it's higher now. Now, once again, I don't have more current data, but that's what I think we've got going on now. But here's the killer. We saw this big increase in 2020. The economy slowed, so that increased the number of zombie companies. But this year, the Fed is going to be the cause of more zombie companies. Because when the Fed raises interest rates, that kills zombie companies. Because what happens is zombie companies are basically having to borrow money to pay off their old loans and their old interest payments. They're not being able to service their debt through current cash flow. So when the Fed raises interest rates, that makes the interest payments go up. It makes the value of the loans go down. And as a result, it damages zombie companies significantly. So when we look at what zombie companies have done in the last year or two, that's been with interest rates at zero. Okay, zero. With interest rates at a quarter, a half, 3/4, that's going to really hurt them badly. So that's going to be one of the killer things that's going to happen is we're going to see a big increase in the number of zombie companies. Now let's take a look at this from a different perspective. And that is, what is the share of listed companies that are zombies? Well, we hit a 25-year, 30-year peak just after the dot-com bust. In 2022, zombie companies were about 14% of listed companies. And then that dropped down to about 6% by 2008. The 2008 recession spiked it back up to about 12%. Then it dropped down in 2013 to about 6%. And then I showed you what happened recently. So we're going to probably break above that 11% that capped us in 2010 and 2018. Now remember that the percentage of zombie companies is a lagging indicator. So the peak won't be in 2022. It'll be in 2023 and 2024. But the effects and the bankruptcy of zombie companies will occur starting in 2022. So there's a lot of other ramifications, but let's just stop for a second. What are the effects of this dramatic increase in zombie companies? Well, first of all, we're going to increase to a new all-time record. I think we're going to surpass the record that we had in 2001, 2002, or we're going to get very close to it. But we're going to definitely break the more recent records. That's going to lead to an increase in bankruptcies that is going to be very, very large. Bankrupt companies mean that they lay off people. It means that they don't pay their bills. That's going to slow the economy. And I'm going to talk about the slowing economy in a future video, so watch out for that maybe tomorrow. But it's going to hurt the economy. And it's going to be one of those stealth factors where it's not going to be on any headline. It's just going to be another bankruptcy in Peoria, and then another bankruptcy in Montclair, New Jersey, and then another bankruptcy in Tucson. And it's just going to be, companies that have 500 people, 1,000 people, 2,000 people. Nobody's going to notice it, but it's going to be there in the background. The other thing that people are not going to talk about is that in the old days, as in 5 years ago, it was banks, or actually pre-2008, I should say, to be precise, it was banks that lent money to these companies. But because of the Dodd-Frank Act, basically the government took over banks. So banks are privately owned, but their major policy decisions are made by the government. So it's been a stealth nationalization. So what that means is that the government since 2008 has told the banks, don't do risky loans. Now, it may be that doing risky loans can be profitable. There's no question a good banker can make risky loans profitable. A bad banker will lose money on risky loans. That's their business, is to take risk and be paid for it. But the government has basically said, banks, you're not allowed to take risky assets at all. You can only be super conservative. So what's happened is hedge funds have replaced banks as the lenders for risky loans, and that includes zombie companies. Now, right now, the prime rate is really cheap. So if you're General Motors, banks are allowed to lend to General Motors at a very cheap price. But when hedge funds loan, they have all kinds of evil, often they have evil covenants. Things like death spirals in their share structures, interest rates that are, like credit card, like 19.8%. I mean, in other words, zombie companies are desperate, so the hedge funds come in and take advantage of their desperation. But when the zombie companies go belly up, these hedge funds, we're going to see some of these credit type hedge funds go belly up as well. And that's going to impact the financial community, because where do they get their money from? Banks. Ta-da! So it'll affect the banking system. Now remember, all of this is going to start in 2022, but it's really going to hit in 2023. But it is going to be a negative factor throughout 2022. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.